What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. Today we're going to talk about some pretty heavy topics. Probably the heaviest topic that I'm aware of, and that is thermonuclear warfare or strategic nuclear warfare, you know, where they're using smaller nuclear devices and stuff like that, mainly over in the European theater. But I've seen a lot of news in the past 3 or 4 days that have really raised my eyebrow, have caught my attention, have made me think, oh crap, it's about to hit the fan in the form of thermonuclear warfare. And you know, we can go pointing fingers. Who started the war? Should Russia have invaded? On and on and on. But I wanted to first start off, before we get into full-scale thermonuclear warfare, I want to go back and just lay out some foundational blocks. You know, many people are still unaware, because of the mainstream media, who actually started the war. You know, if you want to point to people, it was Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Victoria Nuland, George Soros, many others that were involved in the, I believe it was called the Maiden, what was it called? The Maiden Revolution or something like that. The color revolution that was funded by George Soros, sponsored by the United States government, and in their liaison, or whatever her title was at the time, Victoria Nuland. And it goes way back to 2014 when all this crap was going down. Remember that whole deal when suddenly Russia came in and just took Crimea, and everybody was like, oh crap, Russia just took Crimea, basically without firing, I don't want to say without firing a shot, but without firing very many shots, right? The majority of the people in that region wanted Russia to come in and take over, or at least that's the way I understand it. There were a lot of Russian people that were pro-Russia there, and so there wasn't much of a resistance. The United States, at the time, it seemed like we didn't do anything. But in the shadows of the deep state, we were doing all sorts of stuff. We were helping George Soros, and we were funding this color revolution to get our own puppet in place. We wanted our own puppet in power. And when I look at the, you know, why are the Democrats especially, but a lot of the Republicans as well, why are they so on board with making Russia, you know, enemy number one, right? Enemy of the state number one. I mean, hell, back when Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump, she said that that was going to be one of her objectives, was to go after Russia. So the Democrats have been wearing this on their sleeves for years. And I was just talking to my wife the other day, and it just suddenly came to me like a flash bulb, light bulb moment going off in my head. And it was like an epiphany. I was like, holy crap, you know why they're doing this, right? To my wife. And she was like, you know, kind of trepidatious about answering me. She wasn't sure what I was going for. I said, this is all about resources. When you look around at all of the other NATO countries and things like that, I mean, many of them have exhausted their resources, and they look to Russia and they see this vast land of virtually untapped, unlimited resources. And so because Russia has such a great power and a great land mass and a great amount of what seems to be unlimited resources, that's why all of the globalist-backed nations are pushing for this. And it just suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks. Maybe I should have figured that out months ago, but I just hadn't put all the pieces together of why they were doing this. So now you know why. Now you know who started it and when they started it, back in 2014. So let's get into this first headline, because this was a real eye-opener to me. Before I talk about this first headline, I got to say one more thing. Remember when there were all those biolabs, like I think it was like 14 or maybe it was 19 biolabs that they discovered early on in the Ukrainian war, and people like Victoria Nuland and other ambassadors and whatever denied it. They said, no, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. Then later on, like 2 weeks later, it came true. And they were calling everybody, the mainstream media were calling anybody that questioned the narrative a conspiracy theorist. And they were saying, oh, no, there are no biolabs over there. And then, like I said, 2 weeks later, we find out there are biolabs over there. And then it just got brushed under the rug, no investigation. What are they growing over there? What are they making? Are they making COVID part 2? I mean, I don't know. I'm wildly speculating of what they're doing over there. But my point is, this stuff has been going on. U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. And you know, look, man, if Mexico started doing this sort of stuff and bringing in foreign interests, maybe Russia, let's say, or China, and they started bringing in foreign interests to destroy our country from within, which honestly China is doing right now. That's one of the other big blockbuster stories right now. There's a new book out, I believe, called Blood Money, and it exposes a lot of the corruption that's going on. And China has basically been targeting the United States from within. That's what the fentanyl crisis is all about. That's China. And when you look at like the switches that you're seeing, you know, I remember seeing this like months ago, all these gangbangers like down in Dallas and you know, all the big cities, you know, Chicago, New York City, all of these big cities around the world, around the nation rather, they're turning up with these Glock switches that they're cheaply buying these things off Alibaba or whatever online Chinese supplier they can buy them from. They're highly illegal here in the United States. But I see video after video, especially shorts, of these guys, these thugs, blasting their switched Glock up into the air and stuff like this, right? How is that happening? Because China is intentionally undermining our system and trying to erode our culture from within. It's stated in one of their white papers. So we've got all kinds of legitimate attacks going on that are being ignored. Meanwhile, we're doing everything we can to gain access to Russia's resources. That's what I believe this is all about. The United States wants World War III. I don't believe, based on the interview that I saw with Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson, I don't believe Russia and Putin want World War III. But they're telling us in plain English that if you keep fucking around, you're going to find out. We've got missiles that can hit the United States. So we're going to get into all these headlines where Putin talks about this stuff, and he's telling people in a normal, calm voice that, look, man, you do X, Y, Z, we're going to launch the Satan II missile on your ass. And then it's full-scale nuclear warfare. It'll be bad for civilization. But the CIA has a network of secret bases in Ukraine. Did you know that? And they've had these bases there since 2014, right about the time that I said the United States, with our meddling, actually started the war. So, you know, again, back to what I was saying, it's the most logical argument. Imagine for a second, Mexico was doing similar things, and they were allowing Russia's KGB to come in, or whatever they call them now. They were allowing them to come in and set up secret bases just across the border, allowing them to spy on us. Would a traditional, America-loving president allow that to happen? No, we wouldn't. We would immediately be invading Mexico or whatever we had to do to put a stop to that. But the secret CIA network of bases in Ukraine, they're threatened now by potential U.S. funding cuts. So they're crying over there, oh, how are we going to fund the secret war that we've been trying to get going here for, over a decade now. So when you're wondering what's going on around the world and why Putin does, XYZ or whatever, why he invaded Ukraine or why other nations are looking at the United States as the pariah we are, it's because we have organizations like the CIA that have been for the past 80 years undermining, in many cases, democratically elected officials and putting our own puppets in place because we want to control them. That is a problem. And, I'm not an isolationist, but I'm a non-interventionalist in my philosophy. I don't think we should be out there stirring up hornets' nests all over the world, hoping for the best, hoping that it'll come out in our favor somehow. I mean, look, do I have to say any more than one name? Osama bin Laden, created by us, eventually, according to the story, turned on us and, caused the 9/11 to happen and all this stuff. I mean, again, it's so idiotic that it leaves your head spinning. And I think that's part of the reason that they're doing all this. There's this information dump going on right now because they want to keep people like me and you, they want our heads spinning. They want us looking every different direction so that we can't focus on one single thing and actually ever gain any traction. So anyway, I thought that was a big deal. A huge story. I've had this one under my hat for several days, but yeah, don't forget that. The CIA is out there right now all over the world. These are the 12 bases we learned about, the secret bases that we learned about in Ukraine. How many do they have all around the world? And should we be doing that? Is it morally right for us to go in and undermine someone else's, duly elected president or leader or whatever you want to call him. I don't believe so. And I think the rest of the world is waking up to that we've been doing this crap and causing a lot of these problems around the world to happen. So, I mean, another example is the Shah of Iran. They went in, I believe the CIA went in there, basically undermined the system and got our own puppet in. And then all of a sudden, Iran goes backwards in culture. Women were allowed to dress the way they wanted. Women were allowed to drive cars and stuff like this. Well, then we put our guy in there and all hell breaks loose and it goes sideways. And then later on, the Iran-Contra, all this stuff. I mean, we have been poking these people for decades and decades and decades, and they don't forget like the Americans do. So moving on to the next headline. World War III watch. Macron floats troops in Ukraine for the first time. Moscow warns of inevitable war with NATO. So Macron was over there, Macron, however you say his damn French name. And you know, that's terrible because without the French, the United States would not exist today. Without the French's support during our Revolutionary War, we probably wouldn't have won. So we owe a lot of our freedom and liberty to those French troops back in the day that came over and helped us out, and the people in political power that helped to make those decisions. But now, in 2024, they're talking about, we're going to put some troops over in Ukraine, and they're really pushing hard for it. Macron is. Several of the other, like ambassadors or whatever, you know, Germany's ambassador or whatever, they said, no, we're not going to do that. But the point is there are some people talking about it. And in this article, they say that most likely there are already troops there. And, you know, while we know the CIA has those dozen bases, and probably twice as many as that, we know they have those dozen bases over there because they admitted it now, and they need funding to keep it going. How many, you know, insiders and spies and different things like that do you think Putin has inside Ukraine? I would argue probably quite a lot, because there are a lot of Russian sympathists over there, you know, sympathizers. So he knows that we already have NATO troops on the ground over there. It's just not been publicly acknowledged. And so anyway, we're on the verge of this crap. Several different lines in the sand have been drawn by Putin. So far, they've shown an incredible amount of restraint, considering that we've crossed almost every one of those lines. The F-16s most recently, that was one of the big things, because F-16s can be equipped to carry nukes. So imagine, again, all of a sudden, Mexico gets some kind of super advanced Russian fighter that can carry nukes. I mean, we would be pissed. We wouldn't allow that. We would probably do a nuclear strike to make sure that that didn't happen. A first strike now, because we've changed the rules so that we're allowed to do first strikes. All of the nuclear treaties that we used to have been torn to shreds under the Biden administration. So, again, I think this guy Biden is a Manchurian candidate. He was brought in because he's senile and doesn't know what in the hell's going on. He can be made to destroy the country. And all the blame will be put on him. And the Democrats will all turn on him when the time is right. And they'll be like, oh, we didn't know he was so senile. We didn't know. Oh, no, we didn't know. Meanwhile, if Trump says one little thing wrong, they're saying that he's disqualified from running. Meanwhile, Biden is on TV. Every other word he says is like eebity, 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 and they never say anything. The double standards are so in your face that, again, if you don't see it, it's because you've been indoctrinated successfully by the communist agenda. Next headline, Putin threatens the destruction of civilization and chilling warning to nuke the West. We can hit their territory. So in this article, they were talking about how Putin just did a State of the Union, you know, to everybody that was listening and all this stuff. And he's basically saying we can hit the United States territory with our, whatever it's called, Sarmat 2 or Satan 2 missile or whatever they call it. It's got a huge range. It can go a long ways, and it can carry a lot of nuclear warheads. And so that's something we probably ought to pay attention to. This next headline really caught my attention. Vladimir Putin's nuclear targets mapped. The 14 U.S. locations in Russia's crosshairs. And I thought this might be interesting to some of you guys that may live near some of these locations. And you may want to consider that if this happens, These aren't going to be the only locations, but this will give you a good idea of the targets that are in the crosshairs of the Russians. During his State of the Union address on Thursday, Putin claimed NATO and the U.S. are preparing to strike Russian territory. He added, they must realize that we also have weapons that can hit targets on their territory. All this really threatens a conflict with the use of nuclear weapons and the destruction of civilization. Don't they get that? And it sort of seems like we don't get that. It sort of seems like we're counting on something happening, like trying to get some sort of a coup going inside of Russia, and it never will go to nuclear war. But I mean, I have never seen people, you so-called leaders, so irresponsibly pushing us towards the brink of nuclear destruction. And it seems like there are no breaks in sight. There are no emergency exits or anything like that. These people have no plan other than pushing us towards the brink of nuclear war and hoping it doesn't happen. Hoping that Putin isn't the madman that they've portrayed him to be in the Western media. So number one target, of course, the Pentagon. The Pentagon is perhaps the most obvious target, located in Arlington, Virginia. It's headquarters for the U.S. Department of Defense. So obviously that would probably be one of the prime targets for Putin's nuclear destruction. And it's going to destroy a lot of things and a lot of people around there instantly. And then there'll be the radiation fallout you'll have to deal with if you make it through the initial blast. Naval Station in Norfolk. The U.S. and the world's largest Navy base located in Norfolk, Virginia. It has the highest concentration of U.S. Navy forces, around 100,000. Air operations are carried out here yearly, equivalent to almost 300 a day. So that's going to be a prime target for them to hit. I mean, if you're anywhere near a military base or installation of any kind, I would consider that is probably at least somewhere on the crosshair chart. They may not have you at the top of the list, but it depends what the United States does in response. I mean, if you think that the United States is going to sit here and just take nukes and take blasts to the Pentagon and to Norfolk, no, we're going to fire back. And the more this accelerates, obviously the larger this target map will get. So I never heard of this place, but the Comfort Suites Kings Bay Naval Base area. Let's see here. Another clear target at its base of the United States Navy, located in Camden County, Georgia. So I'd never heard of that, but apparently it's a big deal. And there's a lot of naval stuff there, a lot of naval vessels. And that'd be one of their targets, according to this. Barksdale Air Force Base. And that's Barksdale Air Force Base is in Bossier Parish in Louisiana. The base is home to the U.S. 2nd Bomb Wing. So, I mean, bombers and stuff, yeah, that'd be something that you'd probably want to target if you were Putin. Whiteman Air Force Base, located near Knob Noster, Missouri. The base is home to the U.S. B-2 Spirit bomber, a heavy strategic bomber plane. So, again, going after our ability to retaliate. Next up, United States Strategic Command, another potential key target for the Russians. It is responsible for the U.S. nuclear deterrence and cyber defense, among other key roles, like spying on Americans illegally and stuff like that. I mean, they're busy doing all sorts of stuff over there at the U.S. State Strategic Command base. I'm sure it's all tied in with the NSA and the CIA and all the other alphabet agencies that are violating your rights. VLF array in Lualai. I don't know how to say that, but it's Lualai or Lualii, Hawaii, that communicates military orders to submarines underwater. I mean, I think that's a pretty big deal, so they'll probably hit that place. Kirtland Air Force Base, home to the Air Force Materials Command Nuclear Weapons Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, a lot of sand, a lot of desert down there. I think they could probably turn a big chunk of that to glass. We ain't the only ones that got the mighty power of the nuke. Recently, was that the British, I think it was, that tried to launch one of their nukes? I think their Trident missiles or something like that. And it just basically plopped out of the barrel and fell like 40 feet away. And so obviously it was a clear failure. But we know that they have been testing their Satan II missiles over in Russia, and they work. They've also been using some of their hypersonic weapons over in Ukraine, and they work. I mean, so, a lot of people are counting on the fact that this is old Soviet technology, and maybe some of it is. Maybe some of it wouldn't work, like some of the old Tsar bombas and things like that, right? The big mother of all bombs, or whatever they called it. Those might not work because they're old. They're new old stock, right? So if the maintenance hasn't been upkept and things like that, but they've got whole lot of new stuff. And I heard something the other day. I don't have it on the headlines here, but Russia is building artillery like 7-1 or 10-1 to NATO. So they've cranked up the war machine. They're building munitions and munitions plants and things like that, even though they're under constant attack, even inside of Russia. So, I mean, this thing, from what I'm seeing, from the 40,000 foot view, this thing has no place to go but nuclear. So next up here, we got the 21st Force Support Squadron. This is the U.S. Space Force unit based in Peterson Space Force Base, Colorado. So all over the place, even in the center of the United States. Warren Air Force Base, an Air Force base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and one of the 3 strategic missile bases. Yeah, we've got missile bases and, underground launchers and stuff like that left over from, probably World War II. After World War II, we started building a lot of that kind of stuff. And, the Russians know about it. They've got satellites as well. I mean, again, this is different than anything that we've put ourselves in front of since World War II, to be honest with you. This is the first time that we're picking a fight with a nuclear superpower. I mean, I think you should proceed with caution, but the people in charge are not doing that for some reason. Again, I think they want Russia's resources. I think their ultimate goal is to get rid of Putin, put in some sort of puppet that the United States or the West or NATO controls, and then, tap all them resources, get all that stuff, get all that natural gas and that oil and everything else and the wood and everything else that they've got and the rare earth minerals that I'm sure Russia is probably loaded with. Who needs those minerals? Well, not the Chinese, because the Chinese have bought them all up and left us out in the cold. So we're we're looking pretty bad, especially at the rate that these people are cranking out these lithium batteries. We're going to need an endless supply of lithium, right? And all the other materials that are needed to create lithium batteries. Anyway, moving on. Minot Air Force Base, based in Minot, North Dakota. It's home to the 5th Bomb Wing. This force is used to maintain and operate the B-52H bombers. Pretty big deal. Next up, Hill Air Force Base, home of the Air Force Material Command, housing a variety of missiles, aircraft, and other military technology. It's located in Davis County, Utah. Malmstrom Air Force Base, located in Cascade County, Montana, and the home of the 341st Missile Wing, an intercontinental missile unit. Naval Radio Station Jim Creek, primarily responsible for one-way communications to submarines based near Oso, Washington. So all over the United States. Could you imagine that? If you just woke up one morning and all 14 of these places had mushroom clouds over the top of them, the damage was already done. I mean, again, how do you stop that? We don't have adequate missile defense systems here in the United States to stop anything like this. Not even close, man. Not to say that we couldn't do things to fire back, but there's a massive difference in the way that the United States and mainly the people in the United States look at nuclear war versus all of Europe. I mean, including Russia. In Russia, they actually have multiple public underground bunkers that the public can go to, and they know about these things. Part of it is in their subway system that's built in, that was built under Stalin during the Cold War. Part of it is that, but there are other places, and they're continuing to build and encourage their residents to build their own fallout shelters in case nuclear war comes crashing down on them. How many people do you know that even know where any public access fallout shelter would be or anything like that? It doesn't exist here. The only way you get to go into the deep underground military base is if you're super, important in the deep state. That's basically it. Those are the people and their children and their families. Those are the ones that are going to go to the special base that's underneath that. I can't remember the name of that hotel that's just outside of Washington, D.C. I don't know, 50 miles away from D.C. or something like that. There's some hotel that supposedly has an underground base. Is it Camp David? That may be it. But it's got an underground base. There's Cheyenne Mountain that a lot of people believe connects to the Denver airport, where they built that allegedly huge underground base. And they have all these like crazy dystopian images on the walls and stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of really weird signs that these globalists use to indicate to each other that, oh yeah, hey, this is a place you can go and bring your, deep state family and we'll let you right in. Meanwhile, all the plebes are going to be out there dying of, radiation burns and, whatever, right? My point is, in other nations, especially European nations, they're building their citizens a way to survive. We're not doing that here. Is this part of the plan? I mean, I'm only left to assume these things because no one ever addresses this sort of stuff here in the United States, especially our mainstream media. They're not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole because people might start waking up and going, wait a minute, the Russians, the Russian citizens can go to a emergency underground, nuclear survival bunker and we have nothing to save us, and yet we're the ones out there poking the fucking bear? I mean, it makes no sense unless you're trying to destroy the United States as a superpower. And I think that's what's going on. FT. So listen to this. Leaked files reveal Russia's military criteria for nuclear strike. Leaked military documents outline Russia's doctrine for tactical nuclear weapons use, including the minimum criteria for using tactical nuclear weapons, the Financial Times reported on February 28th. The 29 Russia military files, which date between 2008 and 2014, indicate a threshold lower than Russia has ever publicly admitted, according to experts who reviewed and verified the documents. So the criteria range from enemy incursion on Russian territory to more specific triggers, such as destruction of 20% of Russia's strategic ballistic missile submarines, the destruction of 3 or more large surface warships, 3 airfields, 30% of its nuclear power attack submarines, or a simultaneous hit on the main and reserve coastal command centers are also listed as potential conditions for a nuclear strike. And one thing I wanted to point to here in this article, they say the destruction of 3 or more large surface warships. Well, remember, early on, they took that one warship down. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was like the leading ship that they had, one of the newest ships that they had, and supposedly the Ukrainians took it out, which we all know is probably, they may have been the ones that pulled the trigger, but the weapons were probably supplied by the United States, by NATO countries, and they were probably instructed on what to do. It's the same thing over and over and over. These people think that we're so dumb we can't see through it. When they're accusing their enemy of doing something, that's probably exactly what they're doing. It's happened over and over and over, whether you want to look at the border situation with Biden versus Trump. Biden is actually trying to blame Trump for the current border situation when he's the one that came in and undid all of Trump's stuff right off day one, right? You can't make this stuff up. If World War III breaks out, they're going to blame it on Trump some way or another, because that's the only thing they can do is deflect. They can't actually make sound, logical arguments on their positions. All they can do is deflect to someone else, blame someone else, point the finger at someone else. And I would argue that is not the American way. It's not even a good way to be, period. Looking for people to point the blame to every time you fuck up. That's not the right way to be. It's take responsibility for your own actions, but they never do that. They always deflect. And the media is right there, carrying their water. So guys, let me know what you think about this. Is this potentially an empty threat by Vladimir Putin that's just like, oh, I'm going to nuke you. I'm going to nuke you. He just keeps saying it over and over again. And so far, nothing's happened. Is that increasing the likelihood of an actual nuclear war? Because every time he doesn't actually, respond the way he said when these lines are crossed, now the United States and NATO are going, see, he didn't really do it. So let's push it a little farther. That's what I think is happening. They're continuing to intensify this conflict, and it's going to turn into World War III, if it's not already World War III. I guess the historians in the future, if there is a future, where we actually write books and we have pen and paper to write down on anymore, if that's the case, they'll be the ones to decide when World War III actually started. You could say it started in 2014 under Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Victoria Nuland. 3 of the most evil, corrupt people on the face of the planet. And they were helped out by truly the most evil dude, George Soros. So guys, shit's not looking good. You probably ought to go out and get that book that I've recommended before, Nuclear Survival Skills. And I'm not saying you need to dig a bunker or anything extreme like that, but you might start thinking about how you're going to get out of Dodge, especially if you live next to one of those potential targets. At least have a plan with you and your family. That way you guys can meet up somewhere at a safe place. Hopefully you've got some bug out land or a bug out location. Maybe one of your distant cousins or something has some land that you can go to. You need to work all that stuff out right now, because you may have to flee. You may have to run from nuclear war. At a certain point, if you're outside of the blast radius, it's the only thing you can do is run. If you're inside the blast radius, it's just basically kiss your ass goodbye and, pray to your maker, I guess. That's all you can do at that point, is say your prayers and hope for the best. And I hope that cooler heads prevail. But, again, I look around at the world leaders, and based on what I saw in the Putin-Tucker interview, Putin is intelligent. Our guy is senile and wasn't ever really intelligent, and certainly didn't stand for the kind of values that I stand for, even when he wasn't senile. So we've just got corruption on top of corruption on top of corruption, and it's basically cancer. And no one will do the brave thing and cut out the cancer. Instead, we're just letting it fester and hoping that the next guy will be able to fix it up. But anyway, that's enough rambling from me today. Let me know what you guys are doing down in the comments to prepare yourselves for nuclear war. Are you just going to give up at that point? A lot of people feel that way, that if the nukes start falling, they don't want to survive. Let me know where you stand down in the comments. God bless you. God bless the United States. I'm seeing that light dimming and dimming and dimming. And it's difficult to even make content like this, because I don't want to be nuked. I don't want any of you to be nuked. I want a peace deal. I want this insanity in the Ukraine to stop, and for our tax money to be focused on the defense of the nation, like starting with the southern border be a good place. So anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I always love reading them. As always, I stand for liberty to the bitter end, even if that means standing in a mushroom cloud. We'll see you next time.